Chair, do you have your mic on? Okay, for some reason I'm not getting it. You guys good?
No, not hearing it.
It's not going through the intercom. Is there another mic over there? She's going to read along announcements while I'm asking. People are going to need to hear it.
Okay, so Chairman Mobley,
Here.
Vice Chair Sherry Allen. Here. Board Member Jason Bodwell.
Here.
Board Member Fred Jewell.
Here.
Board Member Nathan Guntham.
Here.
Board Member Bill Thaxton.
Here.
Board Member Justin Sperano.
Here.
Your attendance have been confirmed and will be included in the official meeting minutes. Now I will read the announcements regarding the decorum and the quorum, and procedures of the Board of Appeals meeting. The Board of Appeals' duty is to review and decide on appeals of the director's administrative, a decision or interpretation of the Development Code, appeals regarding approval or denial of a preliminary or final plat without any dedication, and variances from the standard of the Development Code. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. Following are some of the rules and procedures for this part of the meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of the application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remain from the original allotted time. Staff will keep track of the time for both sides. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the public comment cards were received by the Planning and Zoning Clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and, if applicable, organizations before beginning their presentation. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited. So please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue when the person is speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive. The applicant shall not submit material to the Board of Appeals during the meeting. All materials should be submitted to the Community Development Department at least 21 days prior to the scheduled meeting for inclusion in the normal distribution of packaging to the board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, Board, we have the agenda. You have that before you. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Thaxton, a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Jewell caught my eye, so second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's unanimous. The minutes are also in front of you, and I think we have one correction that Mr. Thaxton brought to my attention since he made the motion. It's in the last paragraph, says motion and vote. So it says a motion was made by Board Member Bill Thaxton, seconded by Vice Chair Sherry Allen. I think it should read to deny the appeal of the Director's determination on case AP 23-00002. Per City Arborist's recommendation, the motion carried 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Board Member Jason Bodwell opposed. Is that the way it should be? Anybody disagree? All right. So that needs to be changed, and we will. With that change to the agenda, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
The minutes. So moved.
Okay, Mr. Thaxton moves to approve. The second?
Second.
Ms. Allen seconds. All in favor of approving with this change to the minutes, not the
Aye.
agenda, the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. All right. Would you please call the first case?
Thank you, Chair. B, OA 2023-0007, V 23-009-7300 Roswell Road. Applicants are requesting relief from Section 6.4.3.1 and 8.2.6.b.2 to remove the buffer wall requirement along the western boundary of the property where abutting RD-18 properties. Presented by Laquita Williams, Planner 1.
Thank you. Presentation, please, ma'am.
All right. Good evening, board members and members of the public. Welcome to the Board of Appeals August 2nd, 2023 public hearing. All right. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. All right. The applicants are requesting, tonight I will be introducing case V23-0009 for 7300 Roswell Road. Staff's recommendation is approval with conditions. Tonight, the applicants are requesting a variance from sections 6.4.3.1 and section 8.2.6.b.2 to remove the buffer wall requirements along the west boundaries of the property where abutting RD-18 properties. Next, thank you. To the left, we have the zoning map, which this parcel is zoned as CX3 and is within the character area. Protected neighborhood. Commercial mixed use. All right, here is an aerial image of the property where you can see the property boundaries and future roads. Here is a survey with a rendering of the previous North Springs Plaza. Here is a site plan. Currently, this parcel is under construction for a multi-family community with a parking deck. This property is This property is 10.44 acres, zoned as CX3. It was formerly the North Springs Shopping Plaza with Big Lots as its anchor. The west abutting properties, which sits approximately 40 feet high above the site, are zoned as RD-18 and is within the protected neighborhood district. This image demonstrates the property lines in bold red, topography lines in green, future roads in blue, and the 7 abutting neighbors to the west. Here, I would like to note that the closer the green topography lines are, the steeper the slope. Here are pictures from a view from looking south from Dalrymple Road. Beyond the trees are the residential properties where you can see the extreme slope. The applicants are seeking a variance from sections 6.4.3.1 and 8.2.6.b.2 to remove the buffer wall requirement along the west boundary of the property where abutting RD-18 properties. The property has been permitted and is under construction for a 286-unit multifamily residential community. Section 6.4.3.1 of the Development Code states that the neighborhood transition are intended to buffer and screen with evergreen, landscaping, and wall. No buildings, structures, or parking are allowed. Section 8.2.6, neighborhood transition buffers, states the required buffer must include the following components listed in Section 8.2.6.b.2. A wall at least 6 feet tall and not more than 8 feet tall, located 25 feet from the property. No fence allowed. This request is only for the exclusion of the requirement of the buffer wall. Applicants will still have to comply with all neighborhood transition buffer planting requirements. Next slide. Here is another image of the site plan with the permitted multifamily development. Staff has discovered that the conditions on the property are extraordinary and exceptional due to the extreme topography near the required transition buffer. The topography not only makes the wall installation infeasible, but the substantial grade change also makes the wall ineffective in providing screening of the development from the neighbors above. The general intent of the Development Code and Comprehensive Plan policies is to promote the preservation and enhancement of tree canopies in residential areas and provide standards for compatible transitions of building scales and height between existing and new development. In this case, removing the wall requirement would protect the tree canopy. The topography on the property functions as a barrier and serves as a suitable transition between residential and commercial properties. This variance would not be detrimental to the public good, safety, and welfare. Following a review and based on the findings, staff recommends approval with the condition of variance V230009 with the following condition: that the applicant's revegetation plan must be approved by the city's arborist and sustainability manager.
Thank you. All right, so we'll open the public hearing now. First, we'll ask someone to speak on behalf of the applicant, and then we'll ask if there's any opposition. So please come forward. If you're speaking on behalf of the applicant, state your name and your address, and make sure you speak into that microphone, please.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Steve Rothman, 2849 Paces Ferry Road, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm an attorney representing the applicant. Fairfield Springs is behind me. The guys behind me, they're the development team. If you've got questions that require knowledge of math or science, I'm going to point to them. We appreciate the staff's analysis. We agree with it. I won't go through it again. I would like to stress, however, when you read the advertisement, when you hear the analysis, it sounds like we just want to do away with the wall, that we want to get rid of the barrier. But we wish to build an 8-foot solid wood fence. Solid, so no pickets. And that's the deal we struck with the neighbors. The immediate neighbors are the folks we've been talking to since before we filed the application. And we did this application hand in hand with them. And some of them are here, which is why I'm going to wrap up quickly. So we're asking to eliminate the wall because a wall by definition is masonry. The problem we have with a masonry wall is you have to build footings and dig them, and that requires going into the neighbor's yard. If we do a wooden fence or wall, a solid wooden fence, I'll call it that, you don't have to dig into their yard, and so that's why we're asking for this. We believe there's a hardship because if we move away from the property line, our rear property line, I'll do it this way, in this direction, you're going down a very steep slope, and all of a sudden an 8-foot solid wooden fence doesn't screen anything, or even a masonry one. So that's why we're here. We believe we have a unique hardship that's not necessary to preserve the goals and intent of the community. And with that, I'll turn it over to any of the neighbors if they wish to speak, but we'd ask for your support. And if you have any questions, we're here.
Thank you. So are there other people to speak here in support of the application? If you are, come forward, please.
There's comment cards that were submitted.
We require a comment card. Was a comment card submitted?
Not on his behalf, we didn't. Or, Scott, do we have one over there for him?
Is there going to be anyone else that wants to speak in support? If you do, you should go ahead and
I
fill
do
out a
have
comment.
one, Chair. She's in support of.
Okay. And is that
We have Rhonda Smith.
Smith? Why don't you come forward while he's doing that?
Thank you. Rhonda Smith. Good evening, Board of Appeals members. Rhonda Smith, 76 Long Island Place, speaking to you as president of the Sandy Springs Council of Neighborhoods on behalf of our board tonight. And thank you. I appreciate your consideration of my comments as they relate less to the matter at hand and more to the concept of the matter at hand and any potential future requests of this nature. While you heard that the deal that's been struck and the arrangement between the impacted community and the applicant is intrinsically linked to this request for a variance, it must be made abundantly clear and completely clear that it is by the very nature of the existence of the neighborhood transition buffer language in sections 6.4 and 8.2.6 of the Development Code, it is the reason why that arrangement can even exist. Without the presence of this detailed protective language, which Council of Neighborhoods worked closely on with city staff during the writing of the Development Code adopted in 2017, there would be no leverage point for this impacted community to come to the arrangement for the solid wood fence you heard about. That leverage point and the arrangement have nothing to do with the why of why Council of Neighborhoods is not opposed to this variance. The requirements for the planted buffer and the 6-foot masonry wall provide protection from light, noise, and provide security buffer for those protected neighborhood properties adjacent to any redeveloping commercial property. We appreciate that the planted buffer requirement will be fulfilled. We understand, based on the peculiarities and particular topographic conditions of this parcel at 7300 Roswell Road, that there is good reason why the wall cannot be provided and provide those protections. The conditions on the ground of severe topography mean that the 6-foot masonry wall at the bottom of the hill would not serve to provide the protection it was intended to provide. However, we wish to make it abundantly clear to this body that while this particular arrangement with the impacted community is beneficial and may be appropriate today in this specific case, in the future, commercial redevelopment adjacent to protected neighborhood cannot rely on such arrangements for the mere convenience of the developer to excuse them from the requirements codified in the Development Code. Adjacent protected neighborhood property owners should be completely assured that a commercial development will fulfill the neighborhood transition buffer requirements in the future. Arrangements that result in the trading away of any rights of future homeowners to protection from an adjacent commercial development should not be the instrument by which any development parcel can be excused from the current or any future installed code surrounding the neighborhood transition buffer area. And I truly appreciate your attention and thank you for your time.
Thank you. So, do we have someone else who's filled out
Yes,
a comment
Chair.
card? Thank you.
We
Come
have-
forward.
Ty in support of.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Tyler Lynn. I'm the resident and owner at 635 Win Courtney Drive, adjacent to 7300 Roswell Road. So I'm here to support the variance. My perspective is not only that as a neighbor and property owner, but I'm a professional and certified arborist. I'm a city arborist for one of the other municipalities in the metro area. I manage trees under construction and deal with developments every day. One of my big reasons for asking that they be allowed not to build a masonry buffer wall and instead build a wooden fence is because the construction of a wall would be significantly more impactful and devastating to the ground and the trees. So many trees would have to be removed just to accommodate the existing footprint of a final wall. More would have to be removed for the area of disturbance around it necessary to do the install, and then more would have to be removed or irreparably damaged for the access of personnel and equipment necessary to build it. A wooden fence would be significantly less intrusive and give us the option to preserve trees and minimize soil disturbance. And it would allow more soil volume on either side of our property line afterwards for the installation and growth of more trees like the ones the permittee will plant on their side of the property line, any others that we plant on our side. So that's why I support this variance. Thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in support?
We have one more. We
Okay.
have Mike and Lindsay Brano.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Penno, owner at 595 Win Courtney Drive. I just wanted to represent us and support of the variance to switch the buffer masonry wall to a wooden fence. I think it provides a visual larger barrier, providing us some safety and privacy, much more than a simple little masonry wall would do. So That's all I have to say. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in support? No other cards.
That's it that we have here, Chairman.
All right. Is there anyone here in opposition? All right. For the applicant, you have about 3 minutes left if you want to say anything else. Otherwise, I'll close the public hearing. So it's up to you.
We don't have anything further, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's fine. So the applicant waives the use of their remaining time, and I close the public hearing. All right, board. What are your comments? What do you want to do? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, the report of the planning and zoning folks is very complete. I've read all of that and the letter from the applicant's attorney. And a couple of things that we should somehow make of record is the comments that were made about this being a very exceptional case. That, number one, the wall would not only not serve any purpose whatsoever, but it would also be detrimental to the tree canopy. That's a good reason to do it. To relieve that being done. But if there is a way of noting that this is an exceptional case, I'd sure like for that to be done. The other thing is I had inquired about the fence to see if that should be a condition of granting the variance. And what I learned was that the fence would actually be on the property of the adjacent landowners. Is that right?
That's not correct.
Not correct.
It was my understanding when we had our conversations that the fence was going to be installed on private property and not on the property of the apartment complex.
We intend to install the fence. Steve Rothman, again, on behalf of the applicant, we intend to install the fence, just an 8-foot solid wooden fence on our rear property line, and it's fine if that's a condition of approval. And we're sorry if there was miscommunication.
So to be clear, is it going to be on the property line or is it going to be on your property? Because if it's on the property line, it's both. It's both yours and theirs. So if it's going to...
It's going to be on our property.
Okay.
We don't want to pull building permits on their property. We don't want to have to go and disturb any soil on their property. So it's on our property at our rear property line, or immediately adjacent to the rear property line.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that satisfactory to staff?
That's perfect, and this way they'll be responsible for it in perpetuity.
Thank you.
I have a question while Steve is up here. Can I?
For him? Sure.
Yeah. So with the fence, I know all the neighbors are in agreement. Is there any kind of contract in place at this point, or what kind of assurances have you given the neighbors that, you guys could decide in 6 months, I don't want to build the fence anymore?
Yeah.
Wait a
I'm
minute.
going to introduce Mr. Condi with Fairfield Springs with the applicant to get into the details of that.
Okay. State the question again. You're asking if there's any assurance that they...
Well, we were talking about conditions with building the fence because they said they've spoken to all the neighbors and they have agreed that the fence is the right option versus the wall. So what kind of assurances?
Members of the board, my name is Brian Condi, 3330 Cumberland Boulevard, 375 in Atlanta. Yes, we do have agreements with each neighbor. In addition, we're willing to condition the fence that separates the two properties, or I guess our property and their properties on ours. We're willing to condition that with the board. But in addition to that, we also have agreements with each of the neighbors, except for one who is absent, but she lives in Los Angeles and it's a rental property, but her property will also be fenced on all sides due to the agreements we have with her adjacent neighbors. As it works out, though, like where we don't have her, she'll be fenced in by their neighbors along with us. But yes, there are agreements in place with each of the neighbors. And we have 4 of the 6 residents here that can vouch for that as well.
Great, thank you.
Wait a minute. Stay there, please. Hey, just come back. Come back. Thanks.
Sorry about that.
I just want to make sure I understand this. So the wooden fence that you're talking about is on the property that's being developed?
The main fence that is going to be considered, I guess, to take the place of
Yes.
the wall will be on the Fairfield property.
But then there are other fences also?
We've agreed with the neighbors in part to put on their side yards fencing up to their houses as well as to be good neighbors, yes.
Okay, so it's dual. Some is on their property and some is on yours?
Yes, the one that we will condition and will take the place of a cementitious wall will be, though, on our property, if that makes sense.
It does.
And let me just interject, the other fences besides the one on our property are
Yes.
not part of this application. Those
Yes.
that's a side deal.
That's what the side deals are?
Yeah.
Correct.
And we're going to need permits at another time in the near future. But that's not, those other fences aren't before you. The one that's before you now, for which we seek a variance, is to allow, instead of a masonry wall, an 8-foot fence along our rear property line on our property.
To be clear,
If you want to pull up the
to be clear, the request of the variance is to remove the requirement of the wall, period. That's it. It's not to ask for a replacement because we don't allow a change in material for these fences, for these walls. So the code is very clear. It says that you cannot ask for a variance to change a material of a fence or a wall. So in this case, what the question behind, if they want to put up a fence, that's up to them. But you're deliberating on the removal of the requirement for the wall, period.
So this may help then alleviate your concern. If we can't put that as a condition along our property, on our property, take into consideration, we do have agreements with 6 of the 7 neighbors that a fence will be there. And I know you can't govern this, but there are agreements with individual owners that that fence will be there.
Will be on your property?
It will be.
Are they written agreements or verbal agreements?
It's written agreements signed by both parties.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand this. And from Ginger, what you were saying. The request is to remove a fence, although we are in fact discussing the fact that they will be putting up a fence. So when we are...
It's a wall.
A wall, yes, to not have a wall is what the request is. But the applicant is stating that they will have a wall, a wooden wall that will change the material. But what you're saying is we cannot...
That's not before us.
That is not before us. All that's before us is if it's a removal.
Right. So the neighbors need to understand that the city is not going to enforce these private agreements, I think, is what part of what Ginger's saying. We're just ruling on it, we're voting on this variance. You have an agreement with the developer. It's a private agreement. City's not going to enforce it. So if you need to have council review it or whatever you need to do, you do that independently to make sure it's on your property, their property rather. If you need to see a survey, then you need to do that because the city wants this variance, if it's granted, I don't know that it will, see how we vote, it's just to remove the wall. If you're unhappy with this later, you can't come back to the city, you can't come back to community development or this board and say, they didn't put the wall where they said they were going to. That's going to be a private civil dispute. Everybody understand that that's here? Okay. And I think that's the clarification, right?
And in addition, if they do put up a wall, there cannot be any issue with the city with regard to whether or not they remove it or maintain it.
The fence.
The fence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
So it's both. It's not just
Yeah.
private. It's also the one that they put on theirs if we decide to deny. To oppose.
If we decide to remove the requirement of a wall
Right.
with these other conditions, then the other agreements are private agreements. And so everybody needs to understand that. But I think that's the clarification. Am I right? Okay, thank you.
And I would say that I understand then the neighborhood association's concern about, although they are not opposed to it, but concerned about side deals changing the development code.
Mhm.
Am I correct?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask one more?
Yes, sir.
I understand what we're voting on. I get it. Staff recommendation, approval with conditions. What is the condition? The applicant's revegetation plan must be approved by the city's arborist and sustainability manager? Is that what I'm reading?
That's it.
Is that the?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what I thought.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'd like a little more of an explanation about the Sandy Springs building official that suggests requiring a masonry column in lieu of the proposed wooden column for every third fence panel. What is that about? And that's in the comments from the building official.
The assistant city building official apparently was mistaken when she made the comment, and she's since rescinded it. But you have the printed report, but we've talked to her since the report went out, and she made a clarification to us that the statement was made in error.
Do you have a written statement to include into?
I will. I
Okay.
can get that from her and include it in part of the package after.
Thank you.
Yes.
More questions, more discussion? Does that mean anything?
I also wanted to mention that the letters from the neighbors are in your package as well, page 44 through 52, I think.
Thank you.
All right, we're ready for a motion? Yes, sir.
I'm ready to make a motion that
Good.
variance 23009 be approved with the conditions recommended by staff.
Second?
A second.
Okay, Ms. Soprano, second, Ms. Allen's motion. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Variance is granted. Thank you. Call the next case, please.
BOA 2023-0008, V23-0014, 125 Green Fall Point. Applicants are requesting relief from Division 9.2 to grade into the 50-foot undisturbed natural vegetative buffer and place a wall into the 75-foot impervious surface setback, presented by Laquita Williams, Planner 1.
Okay, Ms. Williams, presentation, please.
So for the next case, we have V23-0014 for 125 Green Fall Point. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Next slide, please. The applicant is requesting a variance from Division 9.2 and 9.4 to grade into the 50-foot undisturbed natural vegetative buffer and within 20 feet of the rear property line, and place a wall into the 75-foot impervious surface setback with the following conditions. One-two Green Fall Point is zoned as RE2 and also is within a character area protected neighborhood. This parcel sits off the cul-de-sac in a semi-pie shape. Here is an image of the survey demonstrating the 24-inch pipe in the rear yard. You can also see the stream that flows southeast to northwest. On the site plan is the proposed augment pipe, head walls, and buffers. This 1.2 acre lot zoned as RE2 is currently developed with a 2-story brick single-family home with a basement, a 3-car garage, a pool, and a rear patio. The previous owners had channeled a section of the stream in the mid-1990s, resulting in this section not being subject to buffers. As a result, the pipe is in a state of deterioration and requires repair and maintenance. In addition to the pipe, the existing wooden retaining walls on either side of the head walls are exhibiting signs of decay, rot, and moisture accumulation. Highlighted in red are the current head walls, and in yellow is the existing pipe. Here you can see the deteriorating pipe on the left and views of the downhill side of the pipe. Here are more images of the existing conditions of the downhill side of the pipe and a view looking north from the rear yard. The applicants would like to replace the failing pipe system resulting in land disturbance within the state and city buffers. The proposal also includes replacing existing timber retaining walls with new code-compliant modular block walls that will be replaced approximately in the same location. And again, the applicant is seeking a variance from Division 9.2 and 9.4 to grade into the 50-foot undisturbed natural vegetative buffer and within 20 feet of the rear property line, and also place a wall into the 75-foot impervious surface setback. All right, go back to slide 13. Yeah, thank you. The blue lines represents the stream buffers and impervious surface setback. The yellow represents the pipe. The red line represents the timber head walls, and the green represents the wall encroachment into the city's 50-foot buffer. Not allowing the buffer encroachment needed to replace the failing pipe system will lead to the complete failure of the pipe, which will likely cause flooding on the subject property and properties upstream. It will allow the applicant to maintain their property and prevent devaluation, which will result in allowing the system to fail. Staff recommends approval with condition of variance V23-0014 to grade, a request for a variance from Division 9.2 and 9.4 to grade into the 50-foot undisturbed natural vegetative buffer and within 20 feet of the rear property line. And also place a wall into the 75-foot impervious surface setback with the following conditions. The first condition is that the proposed timber wall adjacent to the staircase in the left rear of the home is changed to a modular or concrete block wall. The applicant's revegetation plan must be approved by the city's arborist and sustainability manager. The project must be built substantially similar to the site plan provided as part of the application. And lastly, that the applicant must comply with the listed conditions of the Georgia EPD variance. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anyone here in favor, please come forward, speak, state your name, your residence or an address. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Mobley. My name is Doug Lynn. I'm the applicant, 509 Charlotte Drive, Ackworth, 30102. And I've read the recommendations. I really don't have a lot to add to this. We've been working on this for a couple of years, trying to get the EPD, Corps of Engineers, on board with this. And I just want to point out one thing. The wall that is in the 75-foot buffer is an existing wood wall, and that wall needs to come down to be able to give us access to the pipe. And so we're going to be replacing that wall in its exact same location when we're done. And per the staff's recommendations, going from a wood wall to like a modular block wall, we're happy to do all that. And in fact, all of the conditions we're fine with and are ready to move forward. So
Okay.
I'm open to any questions or concerns that the board might have.
Well, let's let that, you'll have some time. If they have questions, you can come back. I don't see anyone else here. Just stay there a minute. So there's no one in opposition. Am I correct about that?
Correct, Chair.
Okay. Anyone else in favor? I don't see anyone else here. Can't be. Anyone have a question for Mr. Lynn? Anyone want to ask a question while he's up here?
Are you the homeowner?
No, I'm the homeowner's representative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm their landscape architect.
I'm just kind of curious, did they install, the current homeowner install the original pipe?
No, what we think is that this pipe was either installed when they developed the property into the subdivision that it is today, or it was the first homeowner of the house. And this is back when Fulton County was running everything and all the approvals came from them. We think that they illegally put the pipe in, obviously, because at that time, it was illegal to put a pipe in a creek. They did that to build a pool in the backyard. And so it was done back in the early 90s, we think.
And what's the reasoning for doing something like that, to
point of
level
order.
out your
To
property?
level, it was topography like this, and they just, there wasn't a backyard to it. And so that's what we think. We don't know for a fact that that's the case. We've just kind of narrowed it down based on the time period that the house was built. That whole property, interesting enough, was owned by the Bailey family, and the Bailey family owned a lot of black-owned theaters in the Atlanta area back in the 20s and the 30s. They bought all this property out, and it butts up to Dunwoody Country Club. And at that time, this was basically a drainage ditch. But they did extensive landscaping and gardens and built bridges and stonework along this now creek. And some of that is still there on this property, which we plan on preserving and keeping our footprint. We try to minimize our footprint to do this. It's difficult to get down to this pipe, and that's why we need access into the 50-foot for safety, for equipment to get down there to be able to efficiently get the pipe dug up.
Chair,
Pipe is small.
Yes, hang on.
did we close the public hearing, or is this question?
Yeah, I thought about that. We've kind of, there's no one else here, but the public hearing is closed. We are into question and answers. I should have said that.
I made a note of
I was watching the clock go by, but I didn't think it was going to matter to anybody. So, yeah, we're in, public hearing's closed. We're in questions and answers.
So anyway, we're going to actually make it better by replacing the pipe. The city engineers looked at it. We're going to size it. It's too small now for the volume of water. We're going to make it a bigger pipe, and we have an extensive revegetation plan. And there is a few things that the arborist and the sustainability manager is asking for, and which we will abide to.
Mm-hmm. You aren't going to increase the volume of water going downstream?
So
I mean, you're increasing the size of this pipe, so we're going to now have downstream neighbors that say that we've caused flooding. You've caused flooding, and that we've somehow approved it.
So the civil engineer who did all the calculations have been approved by the civil engineers at the city. My understanding is the pipe was undersized, and the determination was to make it bigger so that it slowed down the velocity of the water going through the pipe.
Making it bigger is going to slow down the velocity. So, but there's no retention that I see in this plan.
No, sir.
Okay. All right. That's not really. I think the variance is just before us, but since you were there, I was going to ask that question.
And you stated that you had been communicating and working with EPD and the Corps of Engineers. So has there been any approval granted for it?
Yes, ma'am. The EPD has sent an approval letter, and they have listed some things that we need to follow as conditions. And the Corps of Engineers basically sent a letter that said it's approved, and we have a certain length of time to complete it. The state has given us 5 years to do it, although we're planning on moving forward if we can on that.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, sir, you can step back. Okay, board. Any further discussion, or does someone have a motion to offer?
I'll make a motion to approve, or agree with the staff recommendation to approve with conditions for V23-0014.
Okay, Mr. Jewell's motion second.
I second.
Ms. Allen seconds. Any further discussion? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's unanimous. All right, those are the two items on the agenda. The last one's been withdrawn, number C. I just want to briefly note, which most of you may well know, Alvin Johnson, who was on this board for a number of years, passed away on June 7th. I think suddenly it was a health issue. And some of you went to the funeral. I was out of town, wasn't able to do that. Just taking a moment to recognize that. If anyone else has any other comment, then free to make it.
The only comment I would like to make is that Mr. Johnson served the city and this community very, very well, and that was recognized both at his services and with the extensive amount of work he had done on all kinds of levels. He worked with the Board of Appeals, he worked with race relations, all kinds of things that we currently have in place in the city, and festivals and things we celebrate in the city were due to Mr. Johnson's dedication and devotion to this community.
Thank you. All right. Any further new business or ongoing business? If not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Mr. Saxon moves to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.